Welcome to Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I'll be covering every studio song the band has recorded and every bonus track that I can find. Each week we'll go over a new song from the beginning to where they are currently, and as they keep adding albums, I'll keep adding shows. Let the deep dive party begin.
In the magic garden, some were singing, some were dancing.
Let's get back to the song.
Sunrise, bless my eyes, edge my soul, make me whole again. Sunrise, you my song. I'm tired of fighting and fooling around. But from now till who knows when, my soul, Lord, is gonna be my friend. And I love you, all of my time.
Man, he sounds so good.
How hard that is driving. It's that grinding of his guitar and the grinding of that organ. And that is that's quintessential 73, right? That's like
And I
awesome.
love that the way that David is singing is not like it is on the album. I like that he's doing something different. This is how I feel in the moment. This is how I'm singing it. Not like, here's how the song goes and you all know it and just follow along.
that's what live albums are all about to me. Yeah.
Well, I mean, in some, like in pop, I guess you expect more like it's just going to be the song performed live and you're just going to see it instead of hear it. But with rock music, especially back in the 70s, it should be adventurous. It should be exciting to see. And if you're just playing the record, it's not exciting.
At uriahheep.com, plug, you can go back to the history of the gigs played by the years up to about 1980 or so, 1987, something like that. And for this year, I'll bet they had 80 dates, 90 dates throughout the world leading up to this gig or this pair of gigs, if that's what it was. So they have been playing this stuff nonstop. So they're really well seasoned. They're really into it. They had no infighting at this point of any major consequence. And they were promoting, those two albums ahead of this. And then they decided, let's do a live one. And they picked these two gigs. There was some story about they didn't have this one planned, but something fell through. So they did it on this night and another night. Oh, but they're at the top of their game.
Oh yeah.
So that last passage you played, that last passage that you just played is so intense because they were so intense.
Mm-hmm.
If you listen to some of the live stuff that they've done you can find them on YouTube and all that. Aside from this album, there's all kinds of live bootleg recordings out there. They were an amazingly diverse band, and they did stuff so different than the album at these gigs. You wouldn't recognize it. I mean, you recognize the song, of course, but they would do things. Some the organ solos would be different, guitar solos would be different. So they were very diverse and very seasoned at this point. And this is just like picture perfect to me. Every song on this album except one, I think, is picture perfect.
I'm going to be interested to see when we get to that one. You'll have to let me know which one it is.
I'll let you know.
But that's the magic of going and seeing a band live, is that, like I remember when I went to Monsters of Rock and I saw Kingdom Come, and I was really excited because I really liked their album. But it sounded like they just played the album and synced their bodies to it. It didn't seem like they were playing live at all. And I thought, what's the point of paying $75 to go see them play the album? I can just listen to that at home.
I love Rush, and I've seen them live. They sound just like the record, but live like the record. Uriah Heep was different, but Rush is like, their stuff is so complicated and so long. I don't know how they do it, first of all, but secondly, but they sounded just like they're supposed to sound. And he's got Taurus, Moog pedals on the floor, and Geddy Lee's playing his bass and a bunch of keyboards, and Alex Lifeson's doing his thing, but they sound just like their records.
Yeah.
these guys sounded, the song was the same, but the performances were remarkably different sometimes.
Yeah, and I bet it was different
Very
every
cool.
night. It was all how they felt it on that night.
And I think that's the way to do it personally.
Yeah.
Because the fans already know what they're going to get, and they already know what you started a song. They know what song it is.
Right. And that's all they need to know, because then it's just all right, you know what we're doing, just buckle up and come on the journey with us.
And the signature part of that gig, whatever gig it is, we're playing for you tonight this way.
Yeah. Ian Gillan from Deep Purple sang with Pavarotti. And Pavarotti said to him, I'm really jealous of you. I've heard you sing Smoke on the Water a number of times, and every time it's different. He said, if I sang one of these arias any differently, any variation at all, they'd crucify me.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
it's expected to be performed a certain way. And I think that was always the beauty of rock and roll, was it's being a rebel. It's, it's you get what you get out of us on any given night.
The nature of the beast.
Exactly. Well, we got a little bit more song left here.
Let's hit it.
Sunrise, bless my eyes, catch my soul, make me whole again. Sunrise, bless my eyes, catch my soul, make me whole again. Sunrise, catch my eyes, catch my soul, make me whole again. Thank you very much, Tom. Oh, it's good to be back in Birmingham again. I've been here for a while.
Signature Uriah Heep ending.
Oh, yeah. So powerful. Great way to end the first song of the night, too.
The wah was wahing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he ended up with that final 8-10 seconds of the wah going, and Ken was on the wind down of the organ with the Leslie, and they ended up on no wah, a single note, a single chord, a thunderous single chord that just hangs there while Lee finishes up.
Yeah.
And Gary Thain comes on and matches them, hang on with for 5 or 6 seconds, and it kills. And that's Uriah Heep's signature ending for this album.
Yeah. It's perfect.
It was all the time for, during this time frame.
Mm-hmm. It's absolutely perfect. The other thing I noticed too, when you listen to the album version, of course, you have backups of the lead vocal, and you're not getting that live. I'm really glad that nobody sang along with David.
Well, I was listening to it just now when you were playing the last passage. I was trying to fix what you said earlier about David not singing, and the harmonies were so well constructed and easy to under. He was doing it with them on that last passage, that last verse. So he's out in front, and they're harmonizing on each side of my headphones, perfectly in tune with him singing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I meant he wasn't singing the harmony when he wasn't singing vocal. Like, he wasn't jumping in and adding to the harmony at all in the earlier parts.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
I'm saying the same thing. He was doing the lead vocal.
Right.
He was doing the lead vocal, and they were on their own. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's amazing how powerful it sounds without him being added to that. I mean, just perfection. And this is, again, first song of the night. Everybody's, they're always nervous the first couple songs when you go out on stage in a new crowd. You're excited, but there's an element of butterflies and all that. And to perform a song like this with such intricate backing vocals, musically it's a fairly straightforward song, but there's a lot of intricacy to the vocals. I think that's a bold thing to take on for a first song.
I think at this time with the band, they were so, and like they are now, they were, well, prior to COVID, but they're so well versed in what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
That it's almost not being nervous. It's just, we can't wait to play for you.
Yeah.
But the butterflies probably go away after 10 or 20 seconds if it's that loud. And I can't imagine that they didn't know it didn't sound great. Because you just tell. I mean, you can tell when you're in the groove that way. And I think that as versed as they were, as well versed as they were at this point in their career, just starting with this song at this intensity. What a great decision to be made. And I think that they carried it off and didn't miss a beat in this thing. It was perfect.
And what I love nowadays is that, we haven't played together for a year and a half. Let's go play in front of 400,000 people. They just go do it.
Can't wait, right?
Right.
Can't wait.
Well, some of the festivals that they played, in those gigs at the end of the year when they were recording the album, man, those were some big crowds. And I thought, that's really weird, because we're still in the pandemic, but let's have a huge concert. And I'm glad they got to play, but that kind of put me off a little bit. I thought, what's the repercussion of this going to be?
Well, you've talked to everybody. You know how bad they want to get back on the road and play.
For sure, yeah.
They're itching. They're just itching.
Yeah, and it's tough now. I was just listening to an interview with Mick the other day, and he's got a good point. The record company's not going to want them to play any songs from the new album yet. They want, because everybody's videotaping everything now. So that's got to suck for them to know that, whenever that album's going to come out, it's going to be a few months, I'm sure. So to be going out and doing gigs and not be able to play the new material, that's got to be hard.
And they have gigs coming up not too far from now.
Yeah.
So someone has to do some kind of coordination with that.
Exactly.
Because they want to play that stuff.
For sure.
And they're going to have their favorites from this album, from this new album, whatever it shall be named.
Mm-hmm,
they're
right.
going to have their, like, Grazed Upon Heaven or whatever that one was. That was one of their favorite songs. And they love to play it live. Yeah. And I can't think of the titles of everything anymore, but
I think Grazed by Heaven from Living Dream. Yeah.
Thank you. And so they want to get out there, and this has to be a really strenuous time for them. They're itching. They're just itching to get.
Well, and being able to at least get together and write music and record it and do a few gigs here and there. I mean, that just whets the appetite and makes it so much harder not to be doing 4 or 5 nights a week.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. But I'll tell you, they were certainly in top form here on Sunrise, and the elements are amazing because you hear a band that does so many things in the studio, and they pull it off so well, and then you wonder, but what are they like live?
What I want to know is how they found time to practice. You look at their schedule, go to the website and look at that schedule.
Yeah.
When did they find time to have time off to play? Other than playing, they were, I don't know what the history of the band was in that short period of time between when they started with all 5 of them, and grew, obviously, because people left and Ken came on and Lee came on, that kind of thing. But when did they practice? They didn't practice. They played live.
You've got 2 opportunities when you're on the road like that. One is on the tour bus with acoustic guitars and the drummer just playing a serving tray. And when the gear is set up and you're doing your sound check, you jam a little bit. That's really about all you get.
It has to have been such a different life and such an experience to be that busy and that immersed in your career and your music that they just didn't need rehearsals. They just got better and better. They played, so many gigs in those 2 or 3, 4 years when the 5 in the classic 5 were together, that they just, and I don't know, the performances on this album are so well put together. I just can't imagine them being any more professionally peaked than they were.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad that they waited until, 80 gigs or so in to really have everything dialed in and feel comfortable and, really get the sound and everything right. Because listening to this album, of course I've got my Uriah Heep bias. I do a whole podcast on them, but there's a certain element of these guys are at the top of their game and we captured it.
Yeah. And don't take away the fact that it's not just the production. It's not just their technique in playing. It's not just the songs. They wanted to sound a certain way. Ken wanted to sound a certain way. He had his own thing going on with his, I keep saying sonically, but that's what it is to me. Mm-hmm. Mick wanted to sound a certain way. He had his tone, he had his wah, he had his stuff. Guitar players are freaks about pedals and all that. And although he was very sparing in what he did, he had his own signature sound he wanted. They're all like that. Lee did the same with his drums, and Gary Thain did the same, and David, of course, right? So they were masters of their craft by this point, that they knew exactly how to dial in what they wanted to dial in. And I think that makes you take advantage even more of the fact that you're playing live in front of how many thousands of people were in this building. Mm-hmm. And they are dialed in, and they knew it. Has to make them play great. And they played just totally awesome on this.
And I don't know what the crowd was, but it had to be a pretty decent size judging by the audience noise.
I'm guessing 3,000 or 4,000. Yeah.
Yeah. Which would have been good back then, you know, and thinking about bands practicing when they're on the road. I know I've seen Metallica. I don't know if they just have it requested at the venues as part of their rider, but there's always some back room where they've got, minimal instruments set up, a small drum kit and that, and just some practice amps, and they jam for a while before they go out on stage. I'm sure that bands didn't have that luxury in the early 70s, but that's at least, a cool thing nowadays to be able to do.
Yeah, you see YouTube videos of the band mm-hmm. between gigs, talking to news reporters and people who are interviewing them on the road in Germany and America and all these places and stuff, and they are so calm and they're so polite and precise, and the difference between that and playing this stuff on stage has got to be 180 degrees.
Oh yeah,
they're monsters on the stage, and they're just so calm and put together and well versed. But total 1970s, it was a whole different thing. It was a whole different era.
And I think if you compare that to modern times, I think Dave Rimmer is a perfect example of that. When you speak to him, he's very soft-spoken, very gentle guy. You put a bass and a chord in him, and you march him out in front of an audience, and all of a sudden he turns into a beast.
Yeah, Dave's a monster.
Yeah, it's such an interesting contrast, But
he's an excellent choice for this band.
Oh,
seriously.
Sure. But their interviews that I've seen from the 70s are all just like quiet, really polite, and everything. And then you get them in front of an instrument, and they're different people.
Yep, the top of their game. Their whole life was this, nothing but this. That's all they could. They didn't even went home half the time.
Right,
they just did this. Be on the road for 8 months, record for 2 months, go back on the road. Mm-hmm. Crazy.
I do have to say, though, I don't think David Byron was a big fan of being interviewed, because he seemed oftentimes where he was just like starting to play with the reporters because he was bored or just not having it that day, and just joking around with them like, yeah, we're just going to throw all our instruments away and be done. And, just little things that throw the interviewers off. And I mean, think about how many interviews can you possibly do and have it be even slightly interesting anymore?
The first 3 or 4 on a tour probably are the great ones.
Yeah.
And then you find one every once in a while that's a great one. But most of them, I agree with you. They got to be, oh my God, another interview. Here we go. So everybody starts smiling and be nice,
Mick is the master of that. I've never heard him. I've heard a lot of interviews with him, and I've never heard him do one where I thought he sounded like, let's hurry up and get this over with, or slightly disinterested. I mean, he really engages in everything he does.
Yes. He does.
It's absolutely amazing.
You see him on tour buses being interviewed. You see him in airports being interviewed, on his phone, on his desk at his house being interviewed. He's always super polite, super involved in the interview. Never lets the guy doing the interview feel like he's getting shortchanged. Mick is a great interview. Yeah, for you. And so are you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's fun. I loved the fact that now I've gotten to meet everyone in the band and do an interview with them. That's been a pretty huge deal for me. And it's just been so great going through all these songs and listening to all the finite details and really appreciating the depth of what this band has created. And live, it's a whole nother aspect, because it's the musicianship, but you're playing with a different passion than you are when you're recording songs that you love.
It's a whole different thing. That it's a whole different thing. You're playing in front of people. The people are feeding you the energy. I mean, it's the people in the audience are just feeding you. And these guys were rock stars at that point. They were one of the top 4. They were rock stars. They were at the top of the game with everybody who was also at the tops of their game at this point. Mm-hmm. What a remarkable time to be a class rock musician, a class act rock musician.
Oh, for sure. It's such a magic combination of instrumentalists, because these guys are each individually incredibly good players. And sometimes that works out and sometimes it doesn't. That's why I don't buy, fantasy sports, because you can stick the best players together and make their stats work. But in real life,
Right.
how well are these guys going to get along? These guys feel like such an amazing, cohesive unit. It's almost like they grew up together.
The point I wanted to get to, and I kind of lost it halfway through and didn't realize it. When I was talking about their signature sounds and stuff. If you've seen live video and talked to these guys about or what they've written about the stuff they went through to get their own signatures. I mean, you see videos of Ken and the organ tech, working on the thing, and they keep doing notes and sounds to make it. I mean, they're going to change tubes or change a pulley, or what head they were using on the amplification. Mick was the same way. They have so it ends up being one big unit, like any band will tell you, one big unit where everybody has a part to play. And these guys are the ones that end up delivering the songs. But everybody behind the scenes, there was Del Roll at this point, and a guy named Todd Fisher that we have on the internet with us. I mean, they were, the techs and the roadies and the transportation companies and all these people. It was a big concert. These guys were one of the top 4 bands at that time out, period. So if you think of Van Halen, right, with these massive stage shows, Uriah Heep, of course, wasn't massive like that, but for their time, they were pretty massive, right? So, I mean, the whole thing, this album is a remarkable engineering feat, I think, of music. The way that they pulled this off, made this sound, it's just beyond me. It's so good. I seriously listen to this thing about once a month, and I have ever since it came out.
Well, and you bring up a great point about, it's not just the band that makes it come together. There are so many people involved with the production, the people that do the scheduling and the transportation and all that stuff, and the techs. I mean, those people are so incredibly important. And that's why one of the things that Heap did during the pandemic was to do the T-shirts that benefit, all the proceeds go to the crew.
Good point.
Those guys are out of work too. I mean, we always think about the band, and of course, most people are like, well, they're rich. They don't, not necessarily, you never know. But at the end of the day, the crew's making nothing. They're not working at all either, but they don't get royalties and residuals.
Right.
So I love that they did that.
Good point, Scott.
Yeah. I'm actually wearing that shirt right now. I just realized that.
Are you really?
Yeah.
I bought 2 of them. Yeah.
Nice. Well, this has been a fun first episode of this new season, Dave. I was really against doing this album in the beginning. People asked me, I'm like, I'm only doing studio stuff. But how do I say no to you?
You gotta love Live 73.
I'm just not a big fan of live albums because, to me, and I think the biggest example will be when we get to Gypsy, because it is so fast. As a concert goer, that tempo makes perfect sense. When I just listen to it, I'm like, I'm missing so many nuances because the song is just flying by and I'm not in that moment with them in the venue. And that's why I don't really like live albums, is because they don't translate normally to me on record. But I have to say, I really enjoyed that song.
Yeah, I'm totally the other way. I think any band sounds better live. Of course, based on the recording quality,
right?
And of doing the recording and doing the mastering and the production of it. But I just think bands have more energy live. Most of their songs are a little bit faster. These guys aren't so much faster, I don't think, on anything.
I thought Gypsy was a little fast, but we'll see how I feel when we get there.
Look at Yourself was kind of fast, and I think Traveler in Time was too fast. But other than that, I don't know. I think those 2 songs are a little bit faster. But normally a band tends to play faster live, right? I think.
Absolutely, yeah. But that's what doesn't translate to me at home, is because I want to just enjoy the song.
Gotcha.
And
I remember those feelings, but I don't feel that on this album, though. I never have.
Now, how many times have you seen Heap, do you think?
10, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 10.
Yeah. So you have a much better feeling for their live presence than I do, because I've seen them twice. And so there's that difference in perspective. But I have a feeling, and I can't believe I'm saying this just after listening to this one song, but I have a feeling this album is going to grow on me through doing this season.
I hope so. It's a great album. It'd be a real shame if you didn't get into really enjoying this.
Well, next time if it turns out that way, Dave, next time you come to Vegas, beers are on me.
All right. I'm into that. I think if the band gets anywhere near either of us, we're going to hook up. There's no I'm in Ohio.
For sure, yeah.
You're in Las Vegas. I think we'll hook up. We'll find some way to get to the middle, maybe like Chicago or something.
Yes. I mean, if we went all the way to each other's towns, it'd be like a 4-hour flight. So anything in between, we can totally do that.
Can do.
Yeah.
What's next on our list? Is this Sweet Lorraine coming up next?
Sweet Lorraine will be our next episode. Yeah.
Right. All right. I'm into that one too. I love that.
We're going to get some theremin.
We're going to get theremin. We're going to get Moog synthesizer.
Oh, it's going to be a blast. All right. Well, until the next one, Dave, thank you very much, my friend.
My pleasure, Scott, as always.
Always.
I'll see you on the internet, right?
That's right.
All right.
Take care, buddy.
Cheers, man.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. If you have enjoyed this show, please consider going over to Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast outlet, leaving a rating or a review. Be sure to subscribe to make sure that you are notified when new episodes are available. Please be sure to share this podcast with your fellow Uriah Heep enthusiasts and anyone who you think would like Uriah Heep, which should be everyone. And if you are so inclined, please feel free to contribute to the Patreon account. And if you are not a Patreon subscriber, you can also pay through the PayPal link on the website listed in the show links below. I would also like to thank Uriah Heep for their very generous support of the show, and thank you guys for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Happy days!